Welcome everyone to another video. My name is Stef Ventura. I'm the Psychic Soul Alignment Coach, and I'm really excited about today's video because today is a free workshop that Brittny and I are offering. So if you are watching my videos for the first time, first of all, okay, my name is Stef Ventura. Like I said, I'm the Psychic Soul Empowerment Coach, and I help people to do very deep levels of healing in order to release limiting beliefs, traumas, fears, and insecurities that they have within themselves that are keeping them from really reaching their potential in life, really being able to achieve their goals and dreams, and just really being able to be their most authentic and highest self. Okay, so that's how I help people. My content here on YouTube is all about mindset, spirituality, manifestation, spiritual entrepreneurship, spiritual activism, my thoughts and experiences. So if this is something that interests you, I highly recommend that you subscribe to my channel, hit the bell notification button, and change your settings to all. Now, with that said, I have a couple of communities that I support online. So one is on Facebook and the other one is on a platform called Awoke. If you don't know what Awoke is, I will put the card up here in the video for you to go and watch the video where I explain a little bit about Awoke and I interview the founder and CEO of Awoke for you to learn more about that platform, but it's really amazing. And so for my Awoke community in particular, what I'm doing for them is I'm bringing on guest speakers and experts to speak to a certain topic that I channel on what we need to address within that month to support the group with something that they're working on, okay? Because that community on Awoke is specifically geared to supporting people in achieving their dreams and intentions and goals for this year. And so I invite people on that will help support them with that. So in February, we've been working through things around self-worth, and I was guided to connect with Brittny Fontanez. You probably know her from Awakened Ones on YouTube, and I will put her channel and stuff here in the cards as well for you to go and connect with her afterwards. But I invited her to come and speak, and she did a class last week on discovering your worth. That was a class that we did here. So we did the live video and I recorded it and then I uploaded it here to my YouTube channel. So if you still want to see that class on discovering your worth, you can go to the cards again and check that video out. This video is another workshop that Brittny is graciously giving her time and energy to and supporting my communities. And this workshop is all around healing the inner child, okay? So if you're interested in healing work and you've been guided to do inner child work, you want to kind of work through the parts of yourself from your childhood, from your past, that are still hurt in some kind of way, that still have things that are unresolved, then this is what this workshop is going to support you with. And Brittny's going to be speaking on that. And if I have any additional comments or things that I need to say, then I will pop in towards the end to speak to that. But that's basically what this video is about. So if you're excited to watch today's video, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, a like wherever you're watching from, and drop me comments and questions down below if you have anything to share or say around this topic today, okay? All right, so without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic or give the stage over to Brittny so that she can get started with her workshop today. So thank you so much. All right, Brittny, let's begin, and I give the mic to you.
Thank you. Well, Steph, thank you so much for that intro. I appreciate you. And I'm so glad to be here today as I assist people. I'm a intuitive shaman healer. I'm a YouTube content creator. I'm a psychic tarot reader. So like Steph said, all my information in my YouTube channel will go in the cards and then information in the description box below. But today I'm really excited to share with you how to reparent the inner child. And I feel a lot of people underestimate this type of work because we don't understand that a lot of things that affect us in our adulthood has started from the beginning of our life, which is our childhood. So today we're going to be discussing ways on how to reparent the inner child and the importance behind it. So I want to start off with the understanding to help you actually engulfed within your being to understand that the way that makes this process more durable is by understanding how to see and accept the parts of yourself that your parents deemed broken and unworthy. And I know that sounds very intense to say, but let's be real, let's be honest, because the more we dive into this type of work, the more we got to be real with ourselves and why we're not happy and why we don't feel like we're worthy of life. And it's because we have created these certain beliefs from our childhood that was from projections from our parents and from society or whoever we were around as a child, and we allowed ourselves to believe in these stories to deem us how we are in adulthood. So understand that these parts that you feel are broken and unworthy, these parts are actually your truths. The things that you suppress, the things that make you believe in these stories that you created from childhood are actually your truths. Meaning that it's not the stories that's true, it's behind the reasoning why you created these stories and what people made you believe in are actually subconsciously what makes up your entire being. So today I want to talk about how to reparent the inner child, and I've been guided to discuss three main things that affect our adulthood from childhood. And the first thing is your abandonment wounds, which I feel this is affecting how you trust, your trust styles, how you trust people, and how you even trust in yourself. Now, the second thing we will continue to discuss is your attachment styles. And I believe knowing your styles are just as important as knowing your natal chart, but if anything, even more important, because your attachment styles really help you understand your codependencies, what you hold on to, as in the stories, as in people's, as in certain things that define your worth and make you define who you are as a person. Now, the last thing that affects us in adulthood from our childhood is our self-image, the beliefs that we hold about ourselves. Now, I please want to emphasize to all of you that when you're learning how to reparent your inner child, it's important not to judge yourself. Here's the thing. The reason why we're doing this work is because we've been so judged. We've been so defined on these falsities, these lies that aren't even our truths, and we've forgotten who we really are. And I want you to understand that as you're doing this work, don't judge yourself. But in order to do this work, you have to not judge your parents as well. Because we have to learn to forgive our parents. Because here's the thing, they didn't know better. They were at a certain consciousness level that wasn't probably beneficial for you, but that's all they knew. And in order to allow yourself to love yourself once again in a way that you never done before, is by understanding that it was not your parents' fault for how they treated you. Could they have done better? Yes, let's be real. But at the end of the day, what's really important is to understand not to judge where you came from, because where you came from is actually a part of your story in a bigger picture. So, first of all, in order to learn how to reparent your inner child, don't judge yourself, don't judge your parents, and don't judge for where you come from. So, I want to get into the first discussion is abandonment wound and the way how this affects your trust styles. Now, for me, for instance, I actually wrote a question here. In order to, well, where does the abandonment wound come from? It's a matter of where in your childhood have you felt your parents did not show up for you? That's the big question. In a way, how can you learn to show up for yourself that your parents failed to? Because abandonment comes from, we were just discussing this even before we started this video, is that, we care so much of what people think about us is because when we were a child, majority of us had to walk on eggshells to try to prove our worth to our parents to receive some form of attention and validation. And because of this, we created this false identity through those projections and made us believe that if we're not a certain way, we can't give the love that we so desire, the nurturing that we need. And because of this, we all walk around in adulthood believing that we are going to be abandoned. So we have to hold on so tightly, or we feel that we could be abandoned and we avoid the very thing that we need to face. So it's very important to understand that in order to reparent the inner child, how is your abandonment styles? What has happened to you at a very young age? What parent did not show up for you? What promise did they make that they couldn't keep? What is it that they did to you that made you feel like you were unlovable? Because the thing is, you have to learn how to give yourself what your parent did not give you. And that's hard to do because at a young age, we don't know what love is. Our parents show us love styles through how they treated each other. And little do we know, we replay those dynamics in adulthood and we don't understand what love really is. So that's why it's really important to understand, what is it in your life that you feel that you have to give up yourself in order to receive love? And that's where the work needs to go into. What is it that my inner child needs that my parents failed to give me, that I'm failing to give to myself? And in this way, the way this affects how you trust, it affects everything about how you trust friendships, even lovers, and even just yourself. Because if you can't face the fact that there's a part of you that feels like you've been abandoned in a way where, for instance, for me, I'm going to share a personal story with you. And that is when I figured out my abandonment wound, it came from I went to a Reiki practitioner. And he was more like a therapist, which was really nice. But he helped me relive a moment that was very suppressed within me that made me feel so lonely. And I just didn't understand why I felt so lonely. I didn't understand why I sabotaged relationships. Why is it that I feel like I always had to chase people? Why is it that I had to prove myself? And this very day, he helped me with that. And I'm not saying I fully healed it, I'm still facing that. But this really helped me understand myself a lot more. And so there was a moment where I was 2 years old. He made me relive this whole visualization, what blew my mind. I remember I was 2 years old and I was in my baby crib, and we lived in the highest apartment on the floor, the highest apartment in the building. And I would never forget, I literally was in my tiny body in that visualization. And all I felt in my intuition that no one was in the house. No one was there. I just felt it. And you know, when a baby cries, I mean, they cry to the point that they're trying to be heard, they're trying to be seen. And at that moment, I just felt so hurt. I felt so lost. And well, with my little self, my little delinquent self, I found a way to get out of the baby crib. And I walked around the entire apartment maybe 3 times, and no one, and I mean it, no one was there. No one was there. And so that made me freak out. And this is how some dynamics in my life has showed me how I freak out so much to the point I hold on too tightly and don't know how to surrender. So in that moment, my little self, all I could do was thinking about, I need to get out. I need to get out this place. And so back in those days, you know how the apartment doors were really heavy because they automatically locked. Well, I don't know. At 2 years old, I found a way to open up that door. I walked down all those flight of stairs. I think I tumbled because, you know, I'm short. And so I got down to the very last step, and I'll never forget. There was this man who opened up the door to try to get into the apartment complex, and he held the door open for me and he let me go. He let me go. And I don't remember what happened after that, but my mom tells this story to this day, like it's a badge of honor when she doesn't understand how much it hurts me. But she's like, Britt, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I got a call from the babysitter up the street, and you walked to her house with a soaked diaper. And that day I knew you had angels with you, which makes sense why I'm on my journey today. But the reason why I share that story with you is because that moment from my childhood has affected me as an adult to make me believe that I have to give up myself for other people, that I have to abandon myself for other people. And here's the crazy thing. When we don't see our abandonment styles, what we despise, we become. If we're not willing to see the very things that affect how we show up in relationships, then we are going to actually end up blaming life, blaming people, or we're not going to realize what is it about me that's making these things occur. Because what we attract is who we are. So it's very important to know that in order to reparent your inner child, you will have to relive moments where you feel like you were not seen and not loved and given the attention you needed. So that's one thing I wanted to share with you on learning how to reparent your inner child is, what is it that you need to give to yourself that your parents failed to give to you? So that's one way to learn how to reparent the inner child. Now, the second one, this is I feel the third one is important, but the second one is very, very important because a lot of people define their worth based on how people see them, and that is your attachment style. And if you haven't read the book Attached, it looks like two magnets together that makes a heart, I highly suggest to read that book because it tells you your attachment style. They have anxious avoidant or avoidant anxious, and they have secure style, which is all about how people show up in relationships. So, but for me, this is not regarding just relationships. This is regarding how you actually perceive life. Now, when I say your attachment styles, it's a form of codependency. How does this very thing define your worth? And a lot of us don't want to see that. See, when we go through trauma as a child, when we get older, we try to fill this emptiness through substances, through sex, through relationships, through different dynamics or forms that kind of feels like it's filling the hole, but if anything, it's making it bigger. And I want to share this with you because the way to reparent your inner child is by first understanding what makes you believe that you need this thing in order to feel whole and complete. Because here's the thing, we all come onto this planet by ourselves, and we're all going to leave by ourselves. We can't take the money, we can't take the substance, we can't take the relationship. So, the very way to learn how to reparent your inner child is by understanding what makes up these attachment styles about you. And for me, I started to realize that, I will be front, I do like women. And I realized within my relationship dynamics that I always tried to prove myself to these women because my mom was emotionally unavailable. And I always thought that I had to be someone else in order for her to see me. And because of this, I always abandoned myself to the point that anytime people wanted to leave because they said I was either too much or too boring or too controlling, I will hold on so tightly to the point like I thought this was my life. I thought needing this person, needing this thing, needing the drugs, needing the alcohol, I needed these things to define who I am. But really what it does when we have these codependencies and these attachment styles is really defining the pain that you are not facing. And in order to reparent your inner child, you have to see what is it that you're trying to get out of these very things you're holding on to that's making you forget about what you truly need? Because as we go through life into our adulthood, little do we know that for me, for instance, there's a lot of things that happened in my childhood where I see physical abuse, sexual abuse. I've seen all these various things happen, and I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't do anything about it at all. So as I got older, I strived for success. I strived to be someone. I've strived to make people see me. And that was my attachment. That was my codependency, is trying to make people see me and trying to control everything in my life because I didn't have no sense of control as a child. And because of this, I started to see how that affected my relationships because I was too controlling, too selfish. All of these things kept popping up and the way that I started to treat myself. And because of this, I had to realize, okay, how am I seeing myself? Where is my worth lie? Is it lie in this person? Is it lie in this? Is it lie in my success and the many subscribers that I have? That's when you have to really acknowledge the fact that your little inner child, here's the thing. Here is the crazy thing. I just recently did a guided meditation on shadow integration. So go check that out on my YouTube channel. It's actually a really intense meditation, but it's very gentle. It helps you connect to your inner child. I had to realize that the very things that we hold on to are codependent on is in a toxic manner. Little do we know that we do things out of toxicity. And really what it is like we could call it our ego, but I feel that your inner child makes its identity in the form of your shadow self to try to get your attention through these toxicities. And I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out as I say this. So Say, for instance, here's the crazy thing. People who are attached to drinking have a lot of anger and regrets. People who are attached to smoking have a lot of sadness. People who are attached to sex feel like that's the only way that they could actually give is through sex because of, the traumas that they've been through as a child. And as I started to realize this, I started to realize the toxicity that I was portraying into the world was my former codependencies. And through those codependencies was my inner child crying out to me that it needed me. She needed me. And if you're a man, he needs you. So in a way, to reparent your inner child is to really be self-aware of what are your codependencies and what are your attachments and how do they stem from your childhood. Because little do you know, the dynamics that we have with our parents are actually replaying in our adulthood. And once we heal those dynamics with our parents, then things start to heal within our adulthood and how we start to see how all these things that we're relying on for our worth and for our sense of safety is really a crying out for you to discover true value. What's up, Steph? She came back. But but so that's the second way to reparent your inner child is looking at your attachment styles and your codependencies. And just know, don't judge yourself, because we do live in a world where there's so many distractions and so many ways to abandon yourself. But it's important to remember that these codependencies are not here to keep teaching you how to abandon yourself. They're here to actually help you go within and see what your inner child needs without these very things. And that's how you start to discover your true values and what's actually important to you, rather important to your instant gratification. So now the last thing I want to talk about is your self-image. And, as we get older, a lot of us, we have these certain perspectives, these certain thoughts and these emotions that get triggered from our circumstances. And these triggers are actually not because of your circumstances. These triggers have always been within us. And it's because they really stem from the beliefs that we have portrayed from childhood and created. And I don't know if a lot of you know, the root chakra is the first chakra because that is when you first come into the world. That is when your spirit self is being grounded into the physicality. So your root chakra is the very first chakra that creates your self-image, your belief system, what you believe about the world and yourself. And from ages to 1, I think, to 7 years old, maybe I think it's 8, that chakra gets affected the most. And it's the root because that is the grounding, the foundation of what makes up who you are. Now, it's important to understand in order to reparent your inner child, in order to start seeing how you perceive yourself, you got to see what have you made up, what stories have you made up from childhood that affects you to today. Because little do we know, most of these stories that we have, how we talk to ourselves, these self-images that we have of ourselves are really projections from other people. So little do we know that we actually come into this world, we're not given permission to have our own, to create our own name, to know our own orientation, to have our own beliefs. So really, the stories that we believe in adulthood are not really our own. And so in order to really reparent your inner child, you have to look at your beliefs and your self-image about how do you hold yourself? Oh my God, my handwriting is so off. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, I'm trying to read it. How has these various stories affect your life? And by this, you can see what has already manifested in your life. In order to reparent your inner child and start giving yourself the love that you need in order to create these significant changes, to allow the goodness in, to allow the best in, you have to start seeing what has already manifested in your life. Now, if you feel that only bad things have manifested in your life, okay, what are the self-images and beliefs that you hold about yourself? And then when you get down to that, how were they created? And that's when you have to really discover, okay, if I have these certain self-images, but I have these certain beliefs. I have these certain ways of thinking about myself. Where did they come from? And majority of the time they come from your childhood. And I know it sounds annoying to hear that consistently, but the thing is, I love that saying that Steve Jobs says, in order to connect the dots moving forward, you got to connect them moving backwards. It's by learning what has brought you to this moment today that is assisting you and not assisting you. And majority of the time, that what has happened in our childhood does make up everything about ourselves today. And it's important to become very self-aware of all the pain that has been inflicted on you, all the trauma that has been inflicted on you, and realizing that none of it is bad and none of it was your fault. But it's important to understand that if this continues to affect you in your life, you have to take responsibility for it. And I know that's hard to say, that you have to reparent yourself knowing that that was someone else's responsibility. But here's the thing, now you know better. So how are you going to do better? So the way to learn how to heal your inner child through your self-image and through your beliefs is by not judging how unconscious you've been about your self-talk, how you see yourself. It's about being aware of the fact that you've been through so much and it hurts, but realizing that it's all a part of how can you transmute that into something beautiful? How can you start seeing yourself as someone who is lovable, who is needed? Because here's the thing, I'll be honest, I was supposed to be aborted, but for some reason I'm here. And it took me a long time to realize that I am a blessing. And I don't say that from being egoic. I say that in a way where all the things I had been through has led me to a journey where I'm being of service. So in a way that even though I wasn't a benefit to my family, I'm a benefit to the world. I'm a benefit to the universe. And it's important for you to understand that your traumas, your experiences in a way are a blessing. So how can you flip that script? How can you start seeing that even though you had projections onto you about who you are, they had nothing to do with you. So how can you separate yourself from, let's be honest, your parents' shit and start realizing your own stuff? Start realizing how you feel, how you think, how you are. Because sometimes our self-image and our beliefs about ourselves really stem from not only projections of people, but the negative aspects of how we see ourselves. What about the positive aspects about yourself? What about the beautiful things that you do offer to this world? And it will take time to be the parent to your child, to your inner child, because it's like, I never was taught how to do this. I never was taught how to love. I never was taught to see the goodness in people. I was only taught to see the worst. I was only taught to be hateful. But that's the work, to understand that now you know what you need. So how can you give that to yourself? How can you start seeing that everything that's happening in your life is actually here to trigger you, to awaken to you that you have the power to change how you see yourself, how you cater to yourself, how you nurture yourself. So those are three things I felt guided to share with you guys. And like I said, as you go through this process, don't judge your past, don't judge your parents, don't judge yourself. Little do we know, our parents, they're the way that they are because of their parents, and they all don't even know better. And I know that all these beliefs are coming through to you, and it sucks that you have to take the responsibility of it. But here's the beautiful thing. If it's affecting you this much, you are the one who's meant to break that pattern. That's how powerful you are. And you first break the pattern by realizing that, you know, even though majority of us, we have to take on so much responsibility at such a young age by all we go through, to the point we grow up trying to believe that we can't make mistakes. So we end up being perfectionists, and we end up suppressing even more. We end up believing that we're not worthy of messing up. We're not worthy of happiness. We're not worthy of being flexible. But now is the point of understanding that now that you're older, you're not that child anymore. You're not going through that experience. So in a way, how can you actually take your little self and hold on to them and tell them that you're not going to go through that anymore? And it's okay now. You can literally teach yourself how you can learn to be a parent, learn to be a better lover, learn to be a better friend, and not take on those stories anymore that never were yours in the first place. So that is the way I've helped myself reparent my inner child. And I feel knowing all of this would help you learn to reparent your inner child. And like I said, I do have a guided meditation I recently did on my YouTube that I actually already got pretty good reviews on, of how to learn how to connect with your inner child and integrate your shadow in a way where there is no more judgments about what you've been through. It's all about learning how to love yourself in a way where you were not given the love that you needed. And through going through this process and being very self-aware on how to reparent your inner child will help you gain more clarity on how to find your happiness in adulthood and in your life. So again, I hope that helped and I hope that assists. And thank you so much for trusting me on your journey.
Awesome, Brittny. Thank you so much for sharing. So I do want to say a few things to the points that you've made and give my perspective as well. Because we're all here to channel different things in regards to this topic. First and foremost, I want anyone who's watching to understand that the importance of doing this inner child work, and you spoke to that towards the end, especially is because if you don't do this inner child work, then your life is going to be lived from a place of unconscious behavior. You're going to continuously do things in your life not realizing that it's actually connected to your childhood wounds and traumas. And until you process that, you're just going to keep living your life that way. So that's why it's really important to do this work. So if, for example, I know a lot of people today suffer from burnout, but burnout a lot of times has to do with the fact that, you know, there's a lot of unconscious things around not being enough and needing validation through money, career, success, whatever, and all these other things because they didn't get when they were children. And so now they're trying to make up for that in adulthood through their achievements, through their financial success or whatever may be. And so they drive themselves to the point of burnout, right? Or they have unconscious beliefs around their family. Maybe their family was like hardworking people or immigrants or whatever, and they hustled and they worked hard and they pushed themselves to the very limits. And so you're unconsciously living off of that paradigm, pushing yourself to the max until your body breaks down because you're not realizing that this is coming from your childhood. And there's probably a fear, an unconscious limiting belief or fear there around, I can't slow down, or I can't, do less than this, because if I do, then my family's going to look down on me, etc. Right. So it's all these unconscious things that drive you in some kind of way in your adulthood to live your life in a way that's truly not authentic with who you really are on a soul level, on a higher self level. And it's only when you finally begin the journey of processing all these things that you finally start letting go of those patterns and you start bringing your life into alignment so that it really does truly work for you and brings you the highest, most authentic levels of joy, happiness, success, well-being. Okay, so that's why inner child work is incredibly important, and we all need to do this on some level, and everyone needs to do this whether they suffered from like legitimate, what we would consider, at least as humans, legitimate trauma, which is like acts of violence or hardships, those kinds of things, war, abuse, rape, etc., those kinds of things. But even if you don't, or you haven't gone through those kinds of things, you probably have trauma on certain levels that you just don't realize. And I see that. I've had clients in the past who feel like, well, I didn't go through these things like you did, Steph, so I don't really know, but I feel like shit about myself. I don't feel like I'm good enough and this and that. And it's
like even a math teacher telling you you're wrong and putting you on the spot in front of class and you feeling guilty and you're feeling stupid, that's a form of trauma itself.
Yeah, or even people who have had it really good in life have had trauma as well, because I remember connecting with a woman who came from a family who had a really good life. They were really pretty well off and always had everything provided because they actually grew up in a loving, harmonious, environment and had things given to them. And they were supported in their dreams and everything. Like they had my dream life, basically.
Yeah.
Like loving parents, opportunities, money, everything, no shortage of anything. But yet they struggled with self-belief. They struggled with being able to make their dreams come true. And it was an eye-opening experience for me to realize that, because self-belief is something that I've had to really work on in my journey, and to see like, wow, so even if I'm seeing like the other side of the coin here with this person having a completely different experience, they still have trouble, struggles. Why? Because they haven't had to necessarily go through things and overcome things for themselves, because it was always like, here you go, we love you, we support
Taken
you.
care of.
Yeah. And so they weren't able to develop that inside of themselves. So even they have things that they have to work through in that regard, right? So it doesn't matter. Inner child work is going to be beneficial to whoever is listening to this video and feels called to go about the journey of healing and of becoming who they authentically are, and no longer living their life unconsciously from their childhood wounds. Okay. So that's what I really wanted to make clear here in this video. Now,
Thank you, Brittny.
to your point around forgiving parents and they didn't know any better, and not judging them or not judging your past, I agree with that. But at the same time, we live in a world that has everything in it, and everything is valid in some way. And so what I personally tell my clients is that if they feel resentment or anger or whatever towards their parents, whatever, that's what needs to work through first. That is the way to heal, is you need to go to the deepest, darkest parts of yourself. And so there's nothing wrong with releasing that bitterness, that anger, that resentment, that hurt, that rage towards people that have hurt you in your life, especially your parents, because we all love our parents. And there are people, I've worked with clients who feel guilty around feeling all these harsh emotions towards their parents because they love their parents. But if you really truly want to heal, you have to be very honest and transparent with yourself. You have to be willing to dig deep and let yourself feel these deeply painful things. And so that is the first step, is really going deep into that and honoring what you truly feel inside and not suppressing it anymore, and letting that be okay, releasing your judgment from it, releasing the fact that, or the belief that you're a bad person or a bad child if you hold all these harsh emotions towards these loved ones. No, you have to honor what your experience was of that whole situation or whatever it may have been, and to process that. And then from that space, you can shift into forgiving, accepting, understanding they didn't know any better, et cetera, et cetera. That's part of the journey as well. So that's what I really recommend to anyone here who, because I see people all the time just suppressing things that they really have to let go of. That's something I want all of you to be mindful of, is no, allow yourself to feel. If you feel pissed off at them and you're going to be pissed off for a while, it's okay. Process that. Eventually it will subside, and eventually you will be able to shift into more forgiveness and acceptance of the past, or how, who they were back then, etc. Right? It's a journey. So that's my little note there.
I want to add to that as well. Just understand, you guys, it's okay not to feel okay. As I started this healing and reparenting my inner child, it was like for months I wasn't feeling okay, because I was processing how angry I was towards my mom for abandoning me, for leaving me, for lying to me, and my dad, it wasn't his fault that he got kicked out, but he abandoned me too, in a way. And I felt that, and it took me a long time to start feeling good again. And I want you to know it's okay not to feel okay when you're processing through all of this, because you didn't know how your inner child was holding on to so much for so long. And now that you are going to become aware of it, you're going to have to allow that part of you to be expressed, and to realize that you got to treat yourself the way you would treat a child. That's how you have to do this type of work, is by realizing that when a child is sad, what you're going to do, you're going to hug them, you're going to love them, you're going to give them reassurance. You have to let yourself know that it's okay not to feel okay, because all these emotions you were holding on to, you did not know. And as you become aware of it, you have to express them in order to release them. So that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And something I want to add to what you just said, that you just reminded me of, is for those of you who are on the little bandwagon of positive thoughts, and you're always like, I'm the think positively, these things don't bother me anymore from the past, I've moved on from that. I can only share my experience with you of how that unfolded for me. Many years ago, when I first started getting into these spiritual things, I came across Louise Hay's work, and I started practicing the positive thoughts, and it for sure started changing my life, because I didn't realize how negative I was in my head. And because of her, I started thinking positively and doing all that stuff. So years went by, and then as I started kind of getting into this work, I was guided to it. I thought my past didn't bother me anymore because I wasn't that negative person anymore. And I wasn't sitting there like dwelling on these thoughts towards, my past or people that had hurt me. Like I had moved on in my life, and in my head, I thought like, oh, I'm positive. I've moved on, nothing, the past is the past, whatever. But I ended up coming into contact with my then psychic mentor, who channeled and said, like, I see your inner child, and I see her carrying a little wagon behind her with a bunch of things, and she's really angry as she's carrying these things. And at first I didn't believe her. I was like, she's full of crap, I'm not angry anymore.
You were bypassing.
Yeah, I was like, I'm positive now, I don't know what she's talking about, whatever. But there was this part of me that still felt intrigued to keep following her and to keep seeing about working with her. And so lo and behold, I ended up working with her. And in the very first journeys that we did, healing journeys, which are basically like meditations, but they actually involve energy work where the person's actually working on you energetically. When we did the first healing journey, that's when I was guided to this place where I saw a relative who I didn't even remember because I was a baby when I met them. And it was actually my father's father. And when I saw this person in my mind's eye, all of a sudden, all this intense rage just flowed out of me towards him. And I was just like cussing him out, telling him everything, blaming him for everything, for why my father had treated me the way that he had. Because if y'all don't know, I had to experience domestic abuse with my parents, and then I had to be abused as well. Or I not had to be, but I experienced abuse at the hands of my father as well when I was a child. And I'm not talking about like just little spankings. I'm talking about, I'm gonna beat your ass, chase
I'll
you
take a
down,
stick. Yeah.
you will get welts, that kind of abuse. And so that's what I experienced. And so I blamed my grandfather for all of this stuff. I didn't even remember him, but I knew it was him. And I was just like yelling at him and blaming him. And I had all these tears just pouring down my face. I had not felt such anger in a really, really long time. And that really opened my eyes to the fact that, like, hold on a second. I have stuff inside of me that I didn't even know was there. And this lady saw it, but I couldn't see it. But it's clearly there. I've experienced it for myself now. And so it set me on this journey of wanting to uncover and discover, like, what else do I hold within me that I'm not aware of? And so that's how I got onto this path of doing this work. And it started changing my life. But that's a story for another day. And so, this is what I want everyone to understand, is that you might have things inside of yourself that you don't even realize. And in my case, I think it was easier for me to unload all of my anger and rage and frustration on my grandfather instead of my actual father, because we all love our parents, or not everyone, but most of us want to love our parents. We have a certain kind of loyalty to them, and we don't want to feel ill feelings towards them. And so I think for me, subconsciously, it was easier to project all of that onto my grandfather so I could release it than to my actual father. And that was part of my healing process. So there might be things within you that you don't know you hold, and maybe you're uncomfortable expressing them towards the people that actually hurt you. But if you really allow yourself to open up enough, you might express them towards someone else in your healing process. And that might be the first step that you need to take in order to continue to release and actually deal with the actual people or situations that affected you. And then you keep going from there. So it's a journey, it's a process. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to say, Brittny?
Just last thing, just know, you guys, even though you feel like you healed something, life is like a spiral, because there's always deeper levels to heal. And remember, we have, if you believe this or not, we have reincarnated many lifetimes. So we're holding on to a lot of things in our DNA and our chemical base, what makes up who we are. So just know that you may have healed some level of what has happened in your life, but there's always deeper levels of healing. This is why it's a journey. So allow yourself to go through the journey, and just know that these ebbs and flows are needed, and just know it's all okay. So
Yeah,
that's all I
like
say.
that situation with healing around my father's situation, I've done so many healings over the years since then. So it's a process, it's a journey. Just because you do a few healings here and there doesn't mean that you're naturally all of a sudden like cured or you're free from that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to come up as you need it. And so as it's relevant to your journey. So definitely be compassionate towards yourself as you go through the process, and don't put these expectations of like having to heal it now or get it done and over with by a certain date or whatever. Because that's you trying to control the process, and instead of just allowing to yourself to accept what is and trusting in that unfolding. So the next thing I wanted to touch up on is the abandonment wounds that you discussed, Brittny, around parents not showing up for you the way that you needed and expect. And what I wanted to elaborate on that is a lot of times when we think of abandonment wounds, we think of a parent leaving. We think of like separation, or maybe a parent passed, or whatever it is of a parent actually leaving. But I really loved how you explained it, is like your parents didn't show up for you. They didn't meet your needs the way that you needed. And so that means then that your parents could have been married this whole time, but one or both of the parents just simply wasn't there for you the way that you needed. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they disappeared or anything like that. It just,
It's like, it could be mental or emotional abandonment as
yeah.
well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, abandonment wounds can express themselves in many ways. For example, you may have had a parent who worked a night shift, so you could never really see them during the day or the evenings when you were a kid because they had to go off to work or whatever may be, or just these kinds of things. Or maybe you had parents who had to work 2 jobs, and so you barely ever saw them, and they're doing what they needed to do to provide for you and give you a better life. But as a kid, you don't understand that. As a kid, you're just seeing like mom or dad isn't here and I'm alone. They're not here when I need them. And because they're not here, I have to do these things now, etc. So there's so many ways that can manifest in you as a person. For example, for me, I struggled with abandonment wounds because long story short, my parents got divorced when I was like about 12 or something. So that was a big shock. But then on top of that, when my mother became a single mother, she started like working 3 jobs to take care of us. So my mom was never around. And then when she was around, I don't know, my mom had a moment, she was crazy for a moment, but that's how it manifested for me in terms of abandonment wound. So I felt that abandonment, not just from my father, but also from my mother, and like you said just a moment ago, it's about emotional abandonment too. And that definitely had that with both of my parents on some level. And it was never their intention, it was never their intention to make me feel that way. I know my parents love me, they both do. But because of how things unfolded in our lives and how I took it as a child, that's how I internalized it, is I'm abandoned. And that led to a series of other things, right, around self-worth and all these kinds of things. So it's just very important to note that abandonment wound doesn't necessarily mean that people disappeared on you or anything like that. It can show up in so many different ways. So you have to be mindful of that, because you might not be aware of how that abandonment wound is playing out in your life, because you think, oh no, I don't have abandonment issues because both of my parents are together, or this never happened. But maybe you had a grandparent that you were really close to growing up, and then when they passed, you felt abandoned by them. I mean, or maybe you moved from one country to the next, and then you're feeling like your family back home abandoned you because you went off somewhere else and you got kicked out. I mean, it's just so many crazy ways in which the abandonment wound can manifest and through different circumstances. So I want everyone to be very mindful of that as they go along their journey, so that it's easier for you to like start recognizing that maybe you have some things you have to work through, right? Do you have anything to say, Brittny?
See, I love how you just felt it. Actually, yes, I've been shared to say this, is that if any of you guys went through a dynamic like for me, my mom, she did have to work 2 jobs as well usually, but anytime that she was home, she was always giving it to relationships. She was always giving it to men, to women, and she just abandoned me and my sister. And it got to a point where I grew up starting believing that I wasn't worthy of people's love, so I have to give more than receive. So I was giving a lot more of myself and receiving very little. And I saw how that dynamic of, wow, my mom is here, but she doesn't see me. She doesn't want to give me attention. And she even would tell me, like when I was younger, she would always tell me, you're too much. You're too much for me. And that hurt me. I heard that more than I love you most of my life. So it's just like, like I said, your parent could abandon you emotionally to the point that you grow up attracting emotionally unavailable people. And here's, like Steph said, you have to do that work, because little do you know what you attract, you are. So in some sense, you could be emotionally unavailable. You can be mentally unavailable too. So it's very important to understand that in what way you feel abandoned, how have you done that to yourself as well? And that's important to understand, that what you despise and what you refuse to see, you become. So you have to really honor your experience, but also take accountability for it.
Awesome. And what I wanted to say first, I also went through that similar experience where it's like, oh, when your parent is finally home, like, yay, you can finally spend time with me. It's like, no, they're leaving you to spend time with their partner, and because they're tired, as well. And they just want to lay in bed with the partner and watch TV or whatever all day. But as a kid, you don't get that, And so it impacts you in these deep and profound ways. But also with abandonment, you just said something, I swear I should have written it down.
Like trust, how it affects your trust styles with yourself and people. I know.
I'm just gonna, if it's supposed to come back to me, it'll come back to me, but I'm gonna move on to self-abandonment, which is, oh yeah, I remember now. Spirit, so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the thing is, what people fail to realize is that if you don't heal your inner child wounds, you are in a way bound to replay things out again and again and again until you awaken to that and you realize that and you work through that. So the thing is that a lot of times with relationships, people are like, oh my God, I can never attract anyone good. I have people that do this to me or this and that and so on and so forth, but they don't realize that what's happening in their experiences a lot of times is connected to their past and what they went through in the past. And it's only being shown today in their present day experience to help bring awareness to that so that they can work through that and release it. So with that, I want to share something that we were kind of discussing before we actually finally went live. We had like a whole 30-minute conversation on relationships. It was amazing.
It was.
And I think I'm going to start doing conscious roundtable conversations again, inviting people to talk on.
I'm excited for that. I'm so being a part of that.
Yeah, it was really fun. I'll put the, playlist of conscious roundtable in the comments of this video, but all the links will be in the comments. But basically, I shared before going live here that I am starting to date again. And the person that I'm speaking to, I got initially triggered by how the conversation and the interaction was unfolding. And when I really allowed myself to process that and sit with that, I was really able to understand that this person was triggering within me feelings of, and Brittny would know if she read my email. Brittny, read the email.
I just received it. Forgive me. It's fine. You're the big sister anyway, so I understand.
No, I just love picking on Brittny, but it was triggering within me feelings around not having my needs met and not being seen, and what was it? And something else. It was like 3 things. And so I share that in the email that I'm picking on Brittny about. But basically, when I recognized that, I was like, oh, this is why, like, I'm feeling this and this and this. Like, it's not the person and their behavior, because a lot of times for us, it's so easy to blame people for their behaviors and how they treat us, et cetera. It's like, oh, they don't do this, they don't do that, da, 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 whatever. But when you take personal responsibility, like Brittny's saying here, you start recognizing your role in all of this and what you are adding to this situation and why, like, how you're contributing to it manifesting and unfolding. And so when I, took the step back and I started working through that, and I recognized, oh, okay, so I feel like, this, and this isn't being met. That's why it's triggering me. And this has nothing to do with this person. It has to do with my childhood, and specifically with one of my parents that I felt this abandonment from, and this lack of like having their love and being paid attention to and stuff like that. And as I processed it even further, I really came to understand, like, oh, this has all around to do me not loving and accepting myself, and me thinking that I have to like tone myself down, because if I'm too much, then people are going to run away from me. They're not going to want to deal with me. And so it let me process that so that I could then work through that and step into this greater level of love, self-love, and acceptance. And by doing so, I can now be much more unapologetically me and not care or not depend on potential suitors or whoever else to love me or fulfill certain needs. Like, no, I can take my power back and give those things to myself. And now I can more freely be myself and not be scared of people walking away from me, because I love and accept myself. And I don't care if I'm too much for some people, cool. If I'm not too much for some people, then awesome. Those are the people that are meant to be in my life. And specifically what I want to share here around this that I shared in my email was, I saw a quote on Instagram, I don't know when, a few months back. And the quote said something about, stop trying to pour yourself into people whose containers are too small to hold all that you are. Something.
I
That's why
like
you need to read
that.
my emails, Brittny.
I like that. Hey, well, you said it, so I'm good.
Oh yeah, sign up to my email list in the comments below. But anyway,
Facts.
so it really reminded me of like, I don't have to make myself small for people to like me or whatever it is, and like asking for certain needs to be met is not a bad thing. Like
It's
I'm
allowed.
Exactly. So that then gave me the courage to start showing up differently in this dynamic. And I swear to God, it was the craziest thing ever because, prior to doing this video, we were kind of talking about this a little bit where Brittny shared how as she's shifted certain things within herself, she's now become more magnetic to people. And the same thing in this relationship dynamic with this person that, seeing is, as soon as I shifted this energy and I communicated what I needed from this person, that I felt wasn't being met, it's like the energy shifted and all of a sudden we went from conversing, exchanging messages every, like, I don't know how many hours, like 4 to 10, 12 hours, to all of a sudden like having back conversations on, like a day or two later or whatever. It just dramatically shifted. And the reason for that leads me into point number 2, which is around attachment styles. Right. And so I'm not an expert on attachment styles. I know that there's avoidant, there's anxious, there's secure, and then fearful or whatever it is. And that's the thing, is that unconsciously I was projecting this anxious energy because let me tell you, some of us, I know I'm not an expert on astrology, but I know some signs are like really clingy people. They're just a lot. No offense to all of you if that's you. I'm an Aquarius, so I'm more relaxed.
I'm a Cappy, so yeah, I could be a little clingy.
Well, I'm more like detached, and so, but
yeah, you're an air sign.
Yeah, exactly. I honor that. I'm grateful for that because it's a different type of, I guess, suffering than you guys.
Yeah, you're right. True. You're like more like anxious avoidant, I would take it as.
Yeah. And so I realized though, like, I'm not the one to blast people with messages or calls to demonstrate my clinginess. I'm not that kind of person. But, unconsciously, my energy was projecting that out to this person that I was talking to. Like, I was sitting there wondering, like, why are they taking so long to respond? They saw my message like right away. Like, why are they taking forever? And I was just like having this anxiety built up inside of me, but I'm not going to be there messaging like, hey, why are you taking forever to message me back?
So anxious avoidant. Yep.
Yeah. And so then that person, kept taking like forever to get back to me until I finally did the inner work. And this is the power of doing the inner work. This is whether you do the inner work through inner child healing or some other modalities, whatever, there's so many modalities out there. I always encourage my clients to explore whatever, they're called to, as it's probably part of their path. But as I worked through that, and then I shifted my energy, I no longer projected that anxiety out anymore. I shifted my energy, and then that resulted in the person messaging me in a timely manner, and then everything just changing from there. So it was really, really interesting to see that play out. And that's part of the attachment styles. Brittny, did you want to say anything?
Yes, actually. So yeah, do you think, girl? Do you think? So just like Steph was explaining how she has her ways of being anxious avoidant, I highly suggest go get that book called Attached, because it explains to you your actual attachment styles. And so for me, I started to realize that I was the type to call over and over and over and over, and I would text like large, like paragraphs, essays. It's because I'm very expressive. I want to let that person know how, I feel. But I started to realize my anxiousness was attracting people who were actually showing me that I wasn't loving myself. So they would run away. And in a way, I would define my worth based on how they were treating me. So I changed and transmuted that energy to start realizing that I don't need another person to give me that sense of love that I know I could give to myself. And then when I started to realize how I started showing up in relationships, I started to realize, how am I showing up in that way for myself? And I started to realize I was anxious about my own power, about my own worth, about, am I lovable? Am I good enough? And when I started to actually see that dynamics within myself, I started to realize, here's the crazy thing, that I used to blame all the relationships that did not work out in my life. And this last one, that I love this person immensely. Like, I never loved anyone the way I loved this person. But this person really showed me how much I abandoned myself, to the point I started to realize, oh wow. Like, the reason why my relationships are the way that they are is because of me. It's because of how I'm showing up. And the way I've transmuted this anxiousness and trying to hold on so tightly is by realizing it's okay to let go. It's okay not to be liked for who I am, because I'm not here to be liked for who I'm not. So I got to honor the fact that, you know what, if I'm too much for people, that's cool. If I'm great for people, I'm grateful. But at the end of the day, it's not about how people see me. It's about how I see myself. And so as I started to be very comfortable in being okay with people leaving my life, all of a sudden I'm attracting a lot of people who are magnetic towards my energy, because I'm not trying to let people know that, oh, I need you, I want you, I crave you, I lack a sense of love within my life. No, you are going to be a part of my happiness, but you are not my happiness. So in a way, it's important for you to see your attachment styles, because it really shows you how you're treating yourself and how you are projecting that out and how people see you. So just honor the fact that, it could be annoying seeing these attachment styles about yourself, but it's really important to see these styles about yourself, because what you're really trying to help yourself see is that, you know, all the unconscious ways that you are towards yourself and life, and actually learning how to transmute that and realizing that you don't really need anything or anyone, because you're already whole and complete within yourself. So that's all I wanted to share.
And also, like, I know for me in the past, especially, I was very much avoidant. Like, I was just like, bye, whenever I got tired of you, or whenever I felt like, okay, this is done, like, I was just gone.
Mhm.
Like, I couldn't be bothered, don't want drama, don't want problems, goodbye. And I was definitely avoidant. And I had people chasing after me, and I was just like, oh, you too much, you suffocating me, bye, I'm gonna out,
Yeah.
But even like a couple years ago, I think I did like the little test that you can find online to see what your attachment style is. And I recognized that I was more like in the secure, like attachment
Mm.
style. I think I got like secure because I had evolved. And when I saw that initially, I was like, whoa, I've come a long way. Cause I know I used to definitely, be on this end of the spectrum, and I would have answered these questions completely differently in the past. And I've come a long way. But even though like a couple years ago, I may have tested as a secure style, like now, because I'm finally getting back into dating again and,
Yeah.
experimenting or living this part of my life, old things, old triggers are coming up. And it's helping me to realize that I have anxious and an anxious attachment style sometimes, and that's what I had to work through. And I wasn't aware of it because I wasn't outwardly displaying anxious behavior. It was an internal thing. And so
Mhm.
this is something I wanted to mention, because in case some of you think like, oh no, I have a secure attachment style, like that's not my problem or whatever. It's like, hold up. Like, I also tested secure too, but at the end of the day, it was only when I had this experience that I was able to recognize that trigger and see what it was about. And I was able to recognize the anxiety within me and in order to release it. So, I just want you to kind of understand that these kinds of online tests are not 100% like foolproof,
Yeah.
like that might be where you're at in the moment, but you will only really be able to know and when you start engaging and interacting with other people to see like what your, I guess, true colors are, your true attachment style is. So that's just something to really be mindful of. And
Yeah.
going back real quick to self-abandonment, which has to do with abandonment wounds, but as well as attachment styles, is what people don't realize is that a lot of times we abandon ourselves a lot of times and who we truly are and what we truly want, because we're afraid of being abandoned, because we're afraid of not being loved or whatever it is. And so going back to my example about my whole dating experience, I was afraid of speaking up to this person and expressing what I wanted from them, because I was afraid of scaring them off. Like that's what was, triggering me. It was so many different things, but the way the conversation unfolded initially, it was like we would respond, they would take forever to respond back to me, even though they saw my message right away. Like salty about that. Not really, not really, but I was then. And so it was just really annoying me. And I was like, why are you taking so long? Like, what is going on? This is rude. How dare you not respect me? And this and that. Like I was going off on a little thing, for a moment, until I snapped out of it and I did the inner work. And then when I did the inner work and I recognized, oh, these are the needs that I feel aren't being met, and I have to express them now to this person. And then I thought, like, okay, I'm going to do that. Cool. I expressed what I wanted from this person. And I basically told them like, hey, I'm not really into superficial conversations. I like having deep conversations, getting to know people deeply. That's why my videos are freaking long. That's why my emails are long. Some people read them, some people don't. It's all good. That's why my posts are long. I don't care. I have a lot of things to say. I will be heard and listened to by the right people. And that's what I appreciate is, getting to know people deeply. I don't want superficial conversations. That's just not for me. It's a waste of my time for me. And when I asked them, about this, and I presented it in a very polite and respectful way, and not in a way like, how a lot of people, when they get triggered, like, you never do this, or you're being this way.
Yeah, they feel entitled.
Yeah. Entitled, or just like demanding. I
There
didn't
you
come
go.
off as that, because I had worked through my stuff. And so when you recognize that you're coming from this kind of energy, you got stuff to work through. So I worked through my things. I politely asked and expressed what I needed and what I wanted and expected from this connection. And then immediately afterwards, I got triggered again, and I realized I felt guilty and uncomfortable for asking for what I wanted. And then that, helped me work through a lot of things. And so I recognize then like, oh, I'm afraid of asking for these things because I'm afraid that this person's going to be like, oh, she's being too clingy. Like, what's wrong with her? We're just now connecting. Like, this is too much, and this and that. And I felt like I was going to be too much for this person for asking for what I needed, which goes back to childhood, parents never meeting my needs in, the way that I needed. I'm sure they thought they did excellent, but that's not what they did,
They always think that. That's when I'm not even going to say that word. Don't say that word. I was going to say that word.
And so, but then that gave me an opportunity to recognize that and work through that and be like, there's nothing wrong with me asking for what I need. And if it's too much for this person, again, if their container isn't big enough to hold all that I am, then it's all good. I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm not going to feel guilty for being the kind of person that I am, which is a really deep person and a person who values deep connections and intimacy and these kinds of, that was the other need I needed met. Intimacy. I knew it. Intimacy, connection. And what was the other thing? I forgot. Anyway, being seen, because this person kept commenting on certain physical aspects of myself. And it was like pissing me off because I'm like, I'm more than just this,
Yeah.
Like, see me, damn it.
That's definitely how I felt. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was these things that were triggering me initially. And anyway, lo and behold, when I came to peace with myself and being like, whatever, the energy shifted. But it made me reflect on who I was in the past. And who I was in the past, I would have abandoned my own needs and wouldn't have spoken up and wouldn't have said anything because, like, oh, I want them to like me, or I don't want them to think bad about me, or whatever it is, And so this is what happens is you show up in life and experience totally different versions of reality when you do your inner work versus when you don't, And so if I had been old Stef and I hadn't done the inner work around this and I had stayed, blind to my stuff and never worked through it, I would have gone about certain patterns of not speaking up and etc. that would have led me to ultimately abandon myself because I'm not asking for what I need. And then it would have created like all of this, just this anxiety inside of me, this bitterness, this frustration, and I would have kept that inside. But I didn't. I did the inner work. I worked through my stuff. I spoke up, etc. And now I feel free. I feel more confident. I'm just like, whatever, take it or leave it. I'm moving on with my life, So this is a vastly different reality. And that's what I want everyone to know and understand that's watching is that, your life can be totally different when you choose to do the inner work.
Facts. Absolutely. I'm going to add to that actually. Anxious attachment is people who feel like they need to express themselves and overextend themselves for people to see them and validate them. Avoidant people, they run away because they feel like if they speak up, they're going to be abandoned. So they believe love is hard to attain or love is painful. Now, I started to realize Stef's talking about her dating life. I actually did have a date recently this upcoming Friday, but they ghosted me. And I really had to be honest with myself because I get a lot of people who are attracted to me, to my looks, who say, oh my God, you're so hot, you're so pretty. And all of a sudden, when it gets to the point of meeting, they all of a sudden get very intimidated and scared. And that makes me feel anxious, like, is there something wrong with me? So I had really to go within myself and realize how the person perceives me has nothing to do with me. So what makes me believe that I need this person to see me? And what is it about me that I'm not seeing within myself? And the crazy thing is how Steph said when she done the inner work, she showed up different. When I did this inner work, I showed up in a way where this person started giving excuses why they didn't want to go on the date. And all I did in a polite manner was like, listen, it's okay. I understand. And this is all that I said. Just please don't give me excuses. Just that's all I said. I said it in the most calmest, mature manner. And then this person, what did they do? They lashed out on me. They said, oh, I'm not going to meet you if you're going to guilt trip me into believing that I'm lying and all of that. You know, I'm over it, dude. Like, I'm over this. And I'm like, okay. So I had to really take a step back and realize I don't need to hold on to how people see me. What I need to do is the fact that I have the right to express my truth and the right to understand that I respect you, but I don't need to abandon myself at the same time because I know my worth. And if you want to give excuses, that's fine. For a long time, I thought people ghosting me was because I thought something was wrong with me. No, I had to realize now I hold myself in a significant way where people think it's intimidating, but it's just who I am. Like Steph said, she's a deep person. I'm a deep person. I'm a real person. Like I'll say how it is, but I'm the type that what I dish out, I could take because I'm that strong. And a lot of people are not like that. So they would be scared by that. And I had to tell myself, you know, I don't need to chase after people and to hold on to people who don't see my worth. Because here's the thing, they don't see their worth. And I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with the fact that I hold a significant light, a power, and a love that a lot of people are not ready to take in. And that means there's not something wrong with me. It just means that, you know, we all got our own stuff to work through. So like we shared this because once you see how you show up in certain dynamics and start to be aware of that and start to transmute that to get different results, you can show up in a more authentic way where you don't feel guilty for expressing yourself, but you know you don't need to overextend yourself at the same time to the point that you're overestimating other people and underestimating yourself. No, it should be equal give and take. So
Yeah, and I think real quick, when I went to the bathroom and stuff, I think I heard you say something about like writing a lot. And, you know, like I said, I write a lot, I talk a lot, and that's just kind of person I am. And I like people who connect with me on that level.
facts.
And I understand people are different. Not everyone's going to do that, but I like connecting with people that are like that. And so I've written a lot, not from a place of like anxiousness, like, oh, you know, I gotta, you know, write all these things out for whatever XYZ reason. No, I have a lot to say and I like asking questions and just I go really in depth. Like it's just an unconscious thing, like, okay, you know. And so, you know, in case, because I think you mentioned, if I heard right, like you saying like you used to write so much from a like wounded place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I overextended myself to make people see me, to make them see like, oh, there's so much good things I could bring to the table. Why don't you see that? Why don't you see that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want everyone to be mindful of, you know, in case you're one of those really long writers like myself, like it does not necessarily mean that you're doing it from a wounded place. You would have to self-explore and see where it's really coming from. As far as I go though, like it's not coming from a wounded place. I just have a lot of things to say. I talk a lot. It is what it is, you know? So just make sure that you're not judging how you express yourself and making assumptions. Like you have to tune in and, you know, go about the process of self-discovery to really see and understand like where it's coming from. Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. So yeah, you know, last but not least, you just talked about triggers, and I just want to add to that a little bit and just say that, yeah, everything in life that triggers you in some way, shape, or form is helping you to recognize something within you that you haven't been able to work through, that you need to process. And, you know, with that, I want to kind of circle back to the beginning of this whole thing, which is inner child work is part of the healing process, but it's also important to do mindset work and to understand what your true beliefs are. Because you mentioned earlier about how, you know, from the time you're in utero to about 7 or 8 years old, but I would even argue that it's even before that, because if anyone knows anything about epigenetics, you know that trauma can be passed down from generation to generation. It's been scientifically proven.
Like chemical based. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. And so even though you may not have been exposed to certain things, but your ancestors were, and so that might get passed on to you, and you might have an unconscious, natural, like fear of something or whatever, but that's because you inherited from the past, people. And so with that said, as you are in the womb or before that, until you're about 7 or 8 years old, you're receiving stimulation or information from the external world that is programming you to go about living your life in a certain way. That's when you start, in your head, making sense of things and thinking like, oh, this must be my parents don't love me. This must be I'm not good enough. This must be this and that, or whatever it is, how the world is. And so you start taking these things on, and those are your inner child wounds. Okay. It's just on the level of like mindset that I'm talking about, because inner child wounds for me are more about the emotional stuff. Okay. It's also connected to your beliefs, of course, but it's more about the emotional things that you weren't able to process. These two things go hand in hand. You have to address the limiting beliefs and fears and insecurities and things that you hold on a mental, intellectual level, but then you also have to process it emotionally and stuff like that through, feeling things and so on. And that's the inner child stuff, the inner child that wasn't able to express themselves freely when they were a kid, and giving them now the space as you're an adult to hold their hand and help them and support them through this process. And so you have to address both things, right? And that's part of healing. I have here on my YouTube channel a playlist on a course that I was doing. It's called Change Your Conditioning. I'll put it up here somewhere in the cards or in the comments of this video that you can start checking out. But that has to do more with mindset work to help you, because not all people are ready to do the deeper emotional stuff. First, they need to go about it in a mental process, right? And so if you need to go about it in a mental process and start uncovering your limiting beliefs, and even just to see for yourself, like, oh yeah, I do have certain limiting beliefs and fears that I didn't know I had. Because a lot of us think we're perfectly normal and nothing's wrong with us. And we're like, yeah, we're fine. But
Sometimes it gets to a point we think pain is normal.
yeah,
Yeah.
we think living our lives is fine and it's normal and it's the way it's supposed to be. And so sometimes we have to realize that no, this is not as good as it is or gets, and this is not actually healthy. And so we kind of have that realization through first doing the mindset work. And so if you're not ready for the inner child healing, you can explore mindset work. There's that workshop or class, whatever I did, to help you start uncovering things and recognizing your conditioning. And then you can take it that next step in your process, which is the inner child healing, but ultimately, like whatever triggers you in some kind of way, whether it's like mentally, like a negative thought keeps coming into your head or an emotion keeps coming up for you, your body feels uncomfortable in some kind of way. It's all basically letting you know what you hold within yourself that you're unconscious of, that you need to work through and process in order to move forward with your life in a different way, in a more empowered and conscious way. So that's what I wanted to share on that. Brittny also touched up on the root chakra earlier in this video and how trauma is stored there. It's the first energy center that's developed in you. I have a playlist here as well called Chakras 101, and it actually breaks down how when you have traumas and things in each chakra, like how it can manifest. It's very in depth. Each video is about 30 minutes long. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check that out. And I think that's basically it I wanted to say. If there are any questions, let me know in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any questions? I think Tammy said something, some suggestions.
Tuning fork therapy. I have a comment here that said I have tuning fork therapy to help.
I'm interested in that, definitely.
Yeah.
So I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. With the tuning fork therapy, it's like we have an aura that extends out like 6 feet past the center of us, like a tree, and it goes back to childbirth, even into like ancestral. And what I loved about the tuning fork is they go in and they work through those layers, and you don't have to acknowledge what you're, the past, it automatically finds it. So as they're working through it, they'll come to areas that feels like it's stuck or is resistant. So they'll keep working in that area until you clear. And during the process, she explained what was coming from my maternal side versus what came from my mother's side. Thank you. And since I had already started the work, I was expressing to her what I was feeling with each stage. And she was like, okay, yes, that's right. But what I found afterward is it helped heal me, but it also affected my relationship with my mom. Like we were able to work through stuff just by me doing that treatment on myself. And I'm still noticing some benefits from that. So there's a lot of ways where you can address your issues. And like you said, some people don't want to really face them. It helps you if you can face them, but it could be a starting point with something that just kind of works without you realizing what you're working on. So, but that's it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Tamara. Yeah. And just know, you guys, the whole point of this work is just to build your emotional intelligence and your mental intelligence to the point where you're not still reliving that experience and you're still being a child, because there's a lot of people who are adults and adult bodies but still have childlike mentalities, and it is tough to see these emotional patterns and actually face those emotions. So like Steph said, it starts with how your self-image, how you talk to yourself, how you see yourself, how you express yourself into the world. And when you start become aware of those little subtle ways of being, then all of a sudden how you think, it will actually trigger you into how you feel. So it's all going to interconnect to the point it's going to lead you to that overall internal healing. So just know, like Tammy said, little techniques like this, as like tuning forks or Reiki, or even just talking to someone you never spoke to before who's a complete stranger, will actually help you unbind yourself from these paradigms and how you see yourself and how you think and how you feel. And it will actually help you unravel the root cause of what is causing these patterns to replay over and over. So
yeah, it's basically, this work is important in order for you to get off the hamster wheel that you're unconsciously on. So if you don't want to keep replaying the same kind of things, then it's in your best interest to start, looking at these things and working through these parts of yourself, Brittny, I want to know your necklace, like the longer one, can you keep shining brightly? And I'm like,
yeah. This is my I actually blessed this. This is one of my amulets that I bought. So it has all the 7 main archangels on it. So it has Samuel, Raphael, Helen, Michael. It has Gabriel. It has these 2 ones I can't pronounce, Zephiel and Zakiel. So what's cool, it has each of their symbols, their own planetary symbols, and their own astrology symbols as well. So for me, I bless this to allow the archangels to always be with me, heal me, and actually be connected to the higher realms. So anywhere I go, like even when I'm around people, they're protected in my aura, because my aura is actually being reflected of, like, I like to see as the heavens always around me. So it's just like, this is my protection amulet. So yeah, that's why it's shining so bright, because it's making itself known, like, yeah, we're all doing this healing, we're all here with you, you're not alone in the process. So
yeah, I just thought it was so funny because earlier you were talking about shining brightly or something like that, and then like it was literally like shining. And I was like, oh my God,
I'm just like, I know you want to make yourself known, but come on.
I love that. Your amulet was just like facts. Awesome. I don't think we have any more questions, do we? I don't know if there are, but yeah, thank you so much to anyone who watched this live in the replay. I really appreciate you. I really hope that this was of tremendous value to you, that it's really supported you with your path. If you know of anyone who could benefit from this information, from this content today, I really would love for you to share this video out with them so we can support them. And if you enjoyed this conversation today, this class today, I would really love to hear from you in the comments below what you got out of it, what resonated with you. If you have any questions, anything you want to share with us in the comments below. And yeah, that's basically it. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and do so. If you are in my Awoke community, I just want to give you a quick reminder that we're going to be meeting this Friday, whatever the date is, 26th, I think, I don't know, whatever Friday is, 25th, I don't know, to do our monthly accountability call. What
time is that?
It's going to be during your work time, I think, Brittny. Well, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard. Can you make
Would there be a replay?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's always record them. But you can share with us your updates and stuff like that. What time? I'll talk to you later afterwards.
Okay.
And thank you. And I think that's basically it. So all relevant links and information for me and Brittny will be in the comments of this video, pinned to the top, so you can go through all of that and see what interests you, because there's going to be like 50 links down there. I don't know. No,
Correct.
20, a lot. And that's basically it. Thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to seeing you in another free class or workshop. I have to organize that, but it's going to come up sometime in March. So make sure you subscribe to my newsletter or you're in one of my communities so that you're always notified of what things I have coming up next. All right. But that's basically it. Thank you so much for your time. I will see you soon. Have a great rest of your week. Bye. Bye, everyone.